Doctors and nurses walked past her every night, barely noticing the quiet janitor pushing her mop to the sterile halls of the Cleveland Clinic. To them, she was just another face on the night shift, another worker in the shadows, invisible. But what they didn't know what no one knew was that this humble black janitor wasn't who she seemed. Behind the faded uniform, behind the tired eyes, was a woman carrying a secret so extraordinary it would shake the entire hospital to its core. Because this janitor was actually one of the most brilliant surgeons in the country. And the night the truth came out, lives would never be the same again. Welcome, dear friends, and thank you for being here with us today. You're about to witness a story of hidden greatness, sacrifice, and unforgettable twist that proves appearances can be deceiving. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because the revelation in this story will leave you speechless. And before we dive in, I just want to thank you for stopping by. Your support means the world to us. If you love powerful, life-changing stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. We've got so many more incredible stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Now let's step into those hospital halls and uncover the truth about the janitor who wasn't just cleaning floors, but saving lives. Princess Goodman had been invisible for 6 years, pushing her mop cart to the halls of Cleveland Clinic, while doctors made life and death decisions around her. They never knew that before she cleaned their operating rooms, she had commanded them as Major Goodman, one of the Army's youngest trauma surgeons to earn the Army Commendation Medal for saving lives under mortar fire in Afghanistan. When a construction accident brought in 6 critically injured workers and the ER was short-staffed, Princess watched from a hallway as young residents struggled with procedures she could perform in her sleep. One patient was dying and Princess had 30 seconds to decide. Stay invisible or reveal that the hospital's janitor had hands trained to heal. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we begin this powerful story of courage, skill, and forgotten heroism, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. Cleveland Clinic never stopped. Patients flowing day and night, doctors rushing around, ambulance sirens screaming constantly. And in the middle of this chaos, there was a woman moving quietly through the corridors, pushing her mop cart with steady hands. Princess Goodman, 38 years old, hospital janitor for 6 years. Dark brown skin glistening with perspiration under a bright orange cleaning uniform that marked her as invisible to most hospital staff. Her athletic build was hidden beneath loose, fitting work clothes. Her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, nothing that would draw attention. The fluorescent lights of Cleveland Clinic cast harsh shadows across the trauma bay as Princess Goodman pushed her yellow mop bucket through the automatic doors. Her dark brown skin glistened with perspiration under the bright orange cleaning uniform that marked her as invisible to most hospital staff. At 38, she moved with deliberate precision, her athletic build hidden beneath loose, fitting work clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, nothing that would draw attention. Princess had perfected the art of being unseen. For 6 years, she had worked the night shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., cleaning the spaces where life and death decisions played out daily. She knew every corner of this hospital, every doctor's routine, every nurse's temperament. They saw her as reliable cleaning staff, nothing more. But Princess saw everything. Tonight felt different. The emergency radio chatter had been building all evening. Construction accident on the east side. Multiple casualties inbound. Princess squeezed the mop handle tighter as she listened to the controlled urgency in the paramedic voices. Her trained ear caught details the hospital staff missed. Mechanism of injury, blood loss estimates, Glasgow coma scale scores. Princess, you need to clear Trauma Bay 3, called Trinity Roberts, the night charge nurse. Trinity was one of the few staff members who actually spoke to her, though their conversations never went beyond work assignments. Yes, ma'am, Princess replied, her voice soft and measured. She had learned to speak just loud enough to be heard, never loud enough to be remembered. As she mopped the trauma bay floor, Princess's eyes automatically scanned the medical equipment. For pumps positioned correctly, defibrillator pads fresh, intubation supplies stocked. Her movements appeared routine, but every action carried the muscle memory of someone who had once commanded these same spaces. The trauma bay doors burst open. "Coming through!" shouted the paramedic as they wheeled in the first casualty. A construction worker, maybe 25, conscious but pale. Princess stepped back against the wall, invisible as always, but her clinical eye was already working. Tachycardic, hypotensive, guarding left abdomen. Classic presentation. Dr. Philip Maddox rushed into the bay, his tall frame moving with confident authority. At 34, Philip was Cleveland Clinic's rising star in emergency medicine. His blonde hair was perfectly styled even at this late hour, his crisp white coat spotless. Everything about him projected competence and control. "What do we have?" Philip asked, his voice carrying the practiced calm of someone accustomed to command. 25-year-old male fell approximately 20 feet when scaffolding collapsed. The paramedic reported complained of abdominal pain en route. Vitals have been stable. Princess watched from her position by the wall as Philip began his examination. She had learned to read doctors as carefully as patients. Philip was skilled but young, confident, but inexperienced with the kind of trauma that was about to walk through those doors. The patient winced as Philip palpated his abdomen. Blood pressure 110/70, heart rate 95, within normal limits. But Princess had seen enough battlefield trauma to recognize the early stages of hemorrhage. "Let's get a CT scan," Philip ordered. "Full trauma panel, and I want chest x-rays." Princess continued mopping, but every instinct screamed that time was the enemy here. In Afghanistan, they would have had this patient in surgery within minutes. But civilian medicine moved more cautiously, more thoroughly, sometimes too slowly. The trauma bay doors opened again. This time it was Zechariah Richards, the night security guard. At 52, Zechariah was a former Marine who had worked at Cleveland Clinic for 8 years. He nodded to Princess as he passed, one invisible person acknowledging another. "Doc, we got 5 more coming in," Zechariah announced to Philip. "Perm say at least 3 are critical." Philip's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment. Princess caught it, the brief tightening around his eyes that signaled doubt. She had seen that look before on young residents in field hospitals when casualties exceeded capacity. "Princess, I need you to prep trauma bays 1 and 2. Trinity called out. "We're about to get busy." "Right away," Princess replied. But her attention remained on the patient in Bay 3. His color was getting worse, blood pressure dropping. The signs were subtle, but unmistakable too. Someone trained in combat medicine. As she moved her mop bucket toward the door, Princess made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. For 6 years, she had been content to remain invisible. But tonight, invisibility might cost someone their life. She slowed her movements, positioning herself where she could observe Philip's patient while appearing to clean the adjacent bay. Her hands gripped the mop handle with the same steadiness that had once held surgical instruments under mortar fire. The patient's breathing was becoming more labored. Princess could see what Philip couldn't from his angle. The subtle abdominal distension, the way the young man's left hand instinctively protected his side. She had seen identical presentations in 18-year-old soldiers half a world away. Internal bleeding, splenic rupture. Needs surgery now, not in 2 hours after imaging. Princess closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the weight of a scalpel in her hand. The satisfaction of stopping hemorrhage with precise cuts and careful sutures. She remembered saving lives instead of just cleaning up after the life-saving was done. When she opened her eyes, the patient's monitor showed a blood pressure of 95/60. Princess Goodman, who had spent 6 years perfecting invisibility, suddenly found herself at a crossroads where staying hidden might mean watching someone die. What do you think Princess should do in this moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe stories of hidden heroes need to be told, hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss what happens next. The next few minutes would determine whether Princess Goodman could continue living as 2 people or whether her carefully constructed invisible life was about to shatter completely. The monitors in Trauma Bay 3 began their deadly symphony. First the blood pressure alarm, then the heart rate warning. Princess watched the numbers cascade downward as if in slow motion. BP 85/55. Heart rate climbing to 120. The patient's skin took on the waxy pallor she recognized from too many battlefield casualties. Philip frowned at the monitors, his confidence wavering. That's weird. His vitals were stable in the ambulance. Princess gripped her mop handle until her knuckles went white. She had seen this exact progression hundreds of times. The patient had maybe 15 minutes before he slipped into irreversible shock. The CT scan Philip ordered would take 30 minutes. The surgery he needed would take 2 hours. The mathematics of death were simple and unforgiving. "Doctor, should I push the CT?" asked Ray Waters, the radiology tech who had just arrived. Ree was efficient and thorough, but he didn't understand that efficiency sometimes meant abandoning thoroughness. "Yes, let's get him down there now," Philip replied. But Princess could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. The second ambulance arrived with a screech of brakes and wailing sirens. Through the trauma bay windows, Princess could see paramedics wheeling in another casualty, then a third. The night was about to become a war zone, and Philip was about to be overwhelmed. "Dr. Maddox, we need you in Bay 1. Trinity called out. This one's critical." Philip looked between his current patient and the chaos erupting around him. Princess recognized a moment every combat medic dreaded when too many wounded arrived at once and impossible choices had to be made. "Get him to CT," Philip ordered, moving toward Bay 1. "I'll check on him as soon as I can." Princess watched them prepare to transport her patient. In Afghanistan, she would have grabbed Philip's arm and said 3 words, "Surgery right now." But Princess Goodman, the janitor, had no authority to speak such words. Major Princess Goodman, Army trauma surgeon, would have already had this patient opened and bleeding controlled. The patient's blood pressure dropped to 80/50. Move, Princess. Save him. But moving meant exposure. It meant questions she couldn't answer, and a life she had worked 6 years to bury. Princess had come home from Afghanistan broken, haunted by the faces of soldiers she couldn't save. Despite her best efforts, the invisible life of a janitor had given her peace. Purpose without pressure, service without the weight of life and death. As they wheeled the patient past her toward the elevator, Princess made eye contact with him for the first time. He was conscious, scared, and young, maybe 23, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. In his face, she saw every young soldier she had operated on in field hospitals from Kandahar to Kabul. "Ma'am," he whispered as they passed, his voice barely audible above the hospital noise. "Ma'am, am I going to die?" The words hit Princess like a physical blow. She had heard that question in Pashto, in Arabic, and in the desperate English of 18-year-old American soldiers. She had always answered the same way, "Not on my watch." But tonight, she had no watch. She was invisible. The elevator doors began to close. Princess dropped her mop. "Wait," she called out, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been heard in these halls for 6 years. "Stop that elevator." Ree looked confused, but held the door. Philip, busy with a critical patient in Bay 1, didn't notice. Trinity turned from her medication cart with surprise. Princess walked to the elevator, her movements no longer those of a janitor trying to stay invisible, but of a surgeon who had commanded operating rooms under mortar fire. "What's your name?" she asked the patient gently. "Tyler," he managed. "Tyler Jackson." "Tyler, I'm Princess. I'm going to take care of you, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He nodded, and Princess saw something she hadn't expected. Hope. She turned to Ree. "This patient is not going to CT. He's going directly to O2. Call anesthesia and tell them we have an emergency splenic rupture that needs surgical intervention immediately." Ray stared at her. "Ma'am, I don't understand. You're Dr. Bristol Lynn from surgery." Princess continued, her voice calm but commanding. "Tell her Princess Goodman needs her in O2. She'll know what that means." Princess had gambled on a memory. Bristol Lynn had been a surgical resident at Walter Reed 8 years ago when Princess was completing her trauma surgery fellowship. Bristol had been brilliant then and was now Cleveland Clinic's youngest attending surgeon. Trinity approached slowly. "Princess, What are you doing saving a life? Princess replied, Tyler has a grade 4 splenic rupture with active bleeding. He has approximately 10 minutes before he goes into irreversible shock. The CT scan will confirm what I already know, but it will also kill him. She looked directly at Trinity, allowing 6 years of hidden expertise to show in her eyes. I'm a trauma surgeon, Trinity. I've been hiding it for 6 years, but I can't hide it tonight. The trauma bay had gone quiet despite the chaos around them. Even Philip, busy with his critical patient, had stopped to listen. That's impossible, Trinity said softly. Princess pulled out her wallet and handed Trinity a card. It was her military ID from 2016, identifying her as Major Princess Goodman, MD, Army Medical Corps. The photo showed a confident woman in Army dress blues with medical insignia clearly visible. I served 3 combat tours as a trauma surgeon, Princess said. I performed over 400 emergency surgeries, including 37 splenic ruptures identical to Tyler's. I know what I'm looking at. Bristol Lynn stepped off the elevator, still wearing surgical scrubs from her previous case. She was a petite woman with sharp intelligence in her dark eyes and prematurely gray hair that spoke of years spent making life and death decisions. Someone called for Bristol to stop mid-sentence when she saw Princess. Major Goodman, just Princess now, Princess replied. Bristol, I need your help. This patient has a ruptured spleen, and we're losing him. Bristol looked at Tyler, then at the monitors, then back at Princess. Years of surgical training had taught her to trust her instincts, and every instinct told her that Princess was right, or 2 is ready. Bristol said, without hesitation, let's go save a life, as they wheeled Tyler toward the operating room. Philip approached Princess. His earlier confidence was gone, replaced by curiosity and something that looked like respect. I don't understand, he said. How do you know, Bristol? How did you diagnose splenic rupture without imaging? Princess paused at the orders. For 6 years, she had answered questions with monosyllables and downcast eyes. Tonight, she looked Philip directly in the eye. Because I've seen this injury pattern in young men exactly Tyler's age in field hospitals where we didn't have the luxury of CT scans, she said. I diagnosed it the same way I diagnosed it in Afghanistan. By looking, listening, and trusting my training. The OR doors closed behind her, and Princess Goodman stepped back into the world she had left behind 6 years ago. As she scrubbed in beside Bristol, muscle memory took over. The familiar ritual of surgical preparation, the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that her hands could mean the difference between life and death. Princess, Bristol said quietly as they scrubbed. Where have you been? Princess looked through the window at Tyler, already intubated and draped for surgery. I've been here, she said, just invisible. Why? Princess dried her hands and reached for a sterile gown. Because sometimes you have to disappear to find yourself. As they entered her, too, Princess felt the familiar calm that came with surgical focus. This was who she had been trained to be. This was who she was meant to be. But as she picked up the scalpel, she wondered if Tyler Jackson's life was worth the end of her invisible piece. Scalpel ready, Bristol announced to the room. Princess positioned the blade over Tyler's abdomen, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. She was no longer hiding, no longer invisible. For better or worse, Major Princess Goodman had returned. Beginning laparotomy, she said, her voice clear and professional. The scalpel moved with precision born of experience, opening Tyler's abdomen to reveal the damage she had diagnosed from 30 feet away. There's the rupture, Bristol said, admiration evident in her voice. Grade 4, just like you said. How did you know? Princess worked quickly, her hands moving with the efficiency learned in combat hospitals where speed meant survival. Because I've seen this before too many times. The surgery proceeded with textbook precision. Princess controlled the bleeding, repaired the damaged spleen, and closed with the same methodical care she had used on countless soldiers. Throughout it all, she felt the weight of her hidden years lifting away. Vitals are stable, announced Dakota McCoo, the anesthesiologist. BP coming up, heart rate normalizing. As Princess began closing Tyler's incision, she realized that something fundamental had changed. She wasn't just saving Tyler's life. She was reclaiming her own. Beautiful work. Bristol said as they finished. It's like you never stopped operating. Princess looked at her hands. Still steady, still sure. Maybe I never did stop. Maybe I was just operating on myself. When they wheeled Tyler to recovery, his color was good, his breathing strong. Princess watched him go, knowing that she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. Tomorrow there would be questions, investigations, explanations she wasn't sure she was ready to give. But tonight, Tyler Jackson would live, and Princess Goodman was no longer invisible. Princess sat alone in the surgeon's lounge, still wearing surgical scrubs that felt both foreign and familiar against her skin. Tyler Jackson was stable in recovery, his vital signs strong, but Princess felt like she was bleeding out internally. 6 years of carefully constructed invisibility had been shattered in a single moment of medical instinct. Her hands trembled as she held a cup of coffee she couldn't taste. The same hands that just saved a life now shook with the realization of what she had done. Every doctor, nurse, and technician in that, or had witnessed Princess Goodman transform from janitor to surgeon. There would be questions, investigations, phone calls to verify credentials that would lead to other questions about why a decorated Army trauma surgeon had been mopping floors. The lounge door opened and Bristol Lynn entered, her gray hair disheveled from the surgery cap. She poured herself coffee and sat across from Princess, her intelligent eyes studying her former colleague with concern. You disappeared after Afghanistan, Bristol said, without preamble. One day you were Major Goodman, rising star of military trauma surgery. The next day gone. No forwarding address, no contact information. We all wondered what happened. Princess stared into her coffee. I came home broken. We all came home with pieces missing, Bristol replied. But we didn't all vanish into janitorial work. Princess, what really happened? The question hung in the air like smoke from an old battlefield. Princess had spent 6 years avoiding this conversation with herself, let alone with anyone else. But Bristol deserved an answer. They had worked together in impossible conditions, saving lives when everything else was falling apart. Do you remember that convoy attack outside Kandahar? Princess asked quietly. July 15, 2016. 15 casualties in 30 minutes. Bristol nodded. You saved 11 of them. Lost 4 despite everything we could do. I remember their names. Princess said, Tommy Rodriguez, 19, from El Paso. Jessica Chun, 22, from Portland. Marcus Williams, 24, from Detroit. Aisha Johnson, 21, from Atlanta. I can see their faces right now. Princess, you can't save everyone. I know that here. Princess tapped her head. But knowing it and feeling it are different things. When I came home, every surgery felt like that convoy. Every patient looked like one of those soldiers I couldn't save. I started second-guessing myself, freezing up during procedures. Bristol leaned forward. PTSD, among other things. I tried therapy, medication, everything the VA recommended. But every time I picked up a scalpel, I heard gunfire. Every time I saw blood, I smelled smoke. I couldn't be responsible for life and death anymore. The lounge fell quiet except for the hum of the vending machine. Princess had never spoken these words aloud. Not a therapist, not a family, not to herself in the mirror. So you became a janitor. Bristol said, without judgment. I needed to be around medicine, but not responsible for it. I needed to serve, but quietly and visibly. It was the only way I could find peace. Bristol stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the city. Cleveland's lights stretched out like stars, each one representing lives going on, while others hung in the balancing rooms just floors below. And tonight, Princess closed her eyes, seeing Tyler's face again. Tonight, I couldn't let another young person die, when I knew I could save them. Princess, you just performed flawless surgery. Your hands were steady, your judgment perfect. Whatever you thought you lost, you found it again. Before Princess could respond, the door burst open and Philip Maddox entered. His usual composed demeanor replaced with barely controlled agitation. His blonde hair was disheveled, his white coat stained with blood from the night's casualties. We need to talk, he said. his voice tight with confusion, and something that might have been anger. Bristol looked between them. "I'll leave you two to sort this out." She paused at the door. "Princess, we're going to have this conversation again soon. Cleveland Clinic needs you." After Bristol left, Philip began pacing the small lounge like a caged animal. Princess watched him, recognizing the signs of a man whose worldview had been fundamentally challenged. 6 years, he said finally. 6 years you've been cleaning floors while I've been making decisions about cases you could handle blindfolded. Philip, I can explain. Can you? He stopped pacing and stared at her. Can you explain how a decorated army surgeon ends up pushing a mop? Can you explain why you let patients suffer through my learning curve when you could have intervened? The accusation hit Princess like a physical blow. This was exactly what she had feared. Not just exposure, but judgment. The assumption that her choice to hide had been selfish rather than necessary. "You think I wanted to watch people suffer?" Princess stood up, her own anger finally surfacing. "You think it was easy to stand there night after night, watching procedures I could perform in my sleep, knowing I could help but not being able to? Then why didn't you?" "Because I wasn't capable." The words erupted from somewhere deep inside her. 6 years of suppressed pain and shame pouring out. "Because every time I tried to practice medicine after Afghanistan, I saw dead soldiers instead of living patients. Because my hands would shake and my vision would blur, and I would freeze up at the worst possible moments." Philip stopped pacing, his anger deflating as he heard the raw pain in her voice. Princess continued, her voice breaking. "Do you know what it's like to know you're a good surgeon but not trust yourself with human lives? Do you know what it's like to have hands trained to heal but a mind too broken to let them work?" The silence stretched between them. Philip sat down heavily, his earlier anger replaced with something that looked like shame. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. Nobody knew. That was the point." Philip looked at her with new eyes, seeing not the invisible janitor or the mysterious surgeon, but the wounded veteran who had been hiding in plain sight. But tonight was different. Tonight you were. Tonight was instinct overriding fear. Princess interrupted. "Tonight, I saw a young man who reminded me of every soldier I couldn't save. And I couldn't let it happen again. Your hands weren't shaking in that, or..." Princess looked down at her hands. They were steady now, but she remembered the trembling from earlier. Sometimes when the stakes are high enough, training takes over. But that doesn't mean I'm healed. It doesn't mean I'm ready to go back to being who I was. Philip leaned forward in his chair. "Princess, what you did tonight saved Tyler's life. More than that, you taught me more about trauma surgery in 2 hours than I learned in 6 months of residency. That doesn't change anything. It changes everything." Philip's voice carried conviction now instead of anger. "You can't go back to being invisible after what happened tonight. Too many people saw. Too many people know." Princess felt panic rising in her chest. The invisible life that had given her peace was gone, shattered by her own actions. There was no going back to the quiet routine of mopping floors and emptying trash cans. "I can transfer today's shift," she said desperately. "Different department. People forget. People don't forget surgery like that. Bristol won't let you disappear again. Trinity saw your military ID. Reed watched you diagnose a condition that stumped me completely." Philip stood up and walked to where Princess sat. For the first time since she had known him, his usual arrogance was gone, replaced with something that looked like respect. "Princess, I don't understand what you went through in Afghanistan. I can't imagine what it's like to come home broken from serving your country. But I saw you in that or tonight. And you weren't broken. You were exactly who you were trained to be." Princess shook her head. "One surgery doesn't erase 6 years of being unable to practice medicine." "Maybe not, but it's a start." The lounge door opened again, and Trinity Roberts entered, looking exhausted from the night's chaos. Behind her came Zechariah Richards, still in a security uniform, but carrying a manila folder. "Princess," Trinity said gently, "we need to talk about what happens next." "I know," Princess replied, resignation in her voice. "I'll clean out my locker and be gone by morning. That's not what this is about." Zechariah said, opening his folder. "I've been doing some checking. Your story checks out. Major Princess Goodman, Army Medical Corps. 3 combat tours. Army Combination Medal. Graduated top of your class from Johns Hopkins. He handed her a printed document. Your medical license is current. Your board certifications are valid. V. According to Army records, you're on indefinite leave status, which means you could return to active duty at any time. Princess stared at the papers. Her credentials, her achievements, her professional life laid out in black and white. The life she had tried to forget. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Trinity sat down beside her. "Because Cleveland Clinic has a problem. We're short-staffed on night shift trauma. We've been trying to recruit experienced surgeons for months, and tonight we discovered we already employ one of the best trauma surgeons in the country. I mop floors. You save lives," Philip said firmly. "Tonight proved that." Princess looked around the room at these 3 people who had witnessed her transformation from invisible to essential. In their faces, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not judgment or pity, but hope. "I'm not the same person I was before Afghanistan," she said quietly. "None of us are the same people we were yesterday," Trinity replied. "But that doesn't mean we stop trying to help others." Zechariah closed his folder. "Princess, I've seen a lot of broken veterans in my time here. Some find their way back. Some don't. But I've never seen someone hide their gifts the way you have. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." The room fell silent as Princess struggled with the weight of their expectations and her own fears. 6 years of invisible peace versus a return to the pressure and responsibility of saving lives. The choice terrified her. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to think." "Take all the time you need," Trinity said. "But Tyler Jackson is alive because you couldn't stay hidden when it mattered. That means something." As the others filed out, Philip lingered at the door. "Princess, for what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The question is whether you're ready to admit it." After he left, Princess sat alone with her coffee and her fear. Outside, dawn was breaking over Cleveland, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility. But Princess Goodman wasn't ready for hope. Not yet. Princess had exactly 13 minutes left of her shift when an emergency alert system screamed through Cleveland Clinic's corridors. She was in the supply closet, changing back into her orange janitor's uniform, trying to pretend the last 8 hours hadn't happened. The surgical scrubs lay crumpled on the floor like discarded dreams. Code black. All available medical personnel report to Trauma Bay immediately. Mass casualty event. Multiple ambulances en route. Princess froze. One arm through her uniform sleeve. Code black meant catastrophic emergency. More casualties than the hospital could handle with standard protocols. She had responded to dozens of code black situations in Afghanistan, but always as Major Goodman, always in command. Her radio crackled. "Princess, forget about clocking out." Trinity's voice carried exhaustion and desperation. "We need every hand we can get." Kitchen fire at the Grand Plaza Hotel. 47 injured, 12 critical. Princess closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of impossible choices. She could walk out the door, drive home to her quiet apartment, and pretend she was still invisible, or she could stay and face whatever came next. The decision was made for her when Philip's voice cut through the chaos over the hospital intercom. "Dr. Bristol Lynn, to Traumastat. We need all surgical staff immediately." He hadn't called for janitors. He had called for doctors. Princess grabbed the surgical scrubs on the floor and put them back on. Some battles chose you whether you were ready or not. The trauma bay was controlled chaos when she arrived. Philip stood at the center directing traffic with a calm authority she had witnessed earlier, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Too many patients, too few hands, too little time. Princess Trinity called out when she spotted her. "Thank God we've got 3 patients who need immediate surgical attention, and only 2 OS available." Bristol Lynn appeared at Princess's elbow, already in surgical scrubs. "I can take the worst case, but I need you to handle the other 2. Can you do this?" Princess looked across the trauma bay at the incoming casualties. Burn victims from the hotel fire. Their injuries severe but manageable with proper care. She had treated hundreds of similar cases in combat hospitals where resources were limited and time was everything. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I can do this." "Then let's save some lives," Bristol replied. For the next 6 hours, Princess found herself trapped in the very world she had tried to escape. Or 3 became her domain, with Philip assisting on the most complex cases. They worked side by side, their earlier tension forgotten in the face of human suffering that demanded their complete attention. "Clamp," Princess said, her hand steady as she worked to repair severe burns on a hotel chef's arms. Philip handed her the instrument with precision, anticipating her needs with surprising intuition. "You're using a different technique than I learned in residency. Combat hospitals teach you to improvise," Princess replied, not taking her eyes off her work. "When you don't have perfect conditions, you adapt." "This is better than perfect conditions," Philip observed. "This is battlefield medicine in a civilian hospital." Sometimes that's what's needed. They worked in comfortable silence for several minutes, their movements synchronized despite having never operated together before. Princess found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of surgery, the outside world fading until only the patient mattered. "Princess," Philip said quietly as they began closing the incision, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Are you glad you stayed?" Princess considered the question while placing the final sutures. The patient's burns were severe but reparable. He would recover completely with proper care. 6 hours ago, that might not have been possible without her intervention. "Ask me again when we're done." She said their second patient was a hotel guest who had jumped from a second-story window to escape the fire. Internal injuries, possible spleen damage, eerily similar to Tyler Jackson's case from the night before. "It's like déjà vu," Philip commented as they examined the patient's scans. "Not déjà vu," Princess replied. "Experience. This is what trauma surgery is. The same injuries, the same decisions over and over until you stop thinking and start trusting your hands." As they operated, Philip asked questions about technique, about judgment calls, about the kind of experience that only came from years of high-stakes medicine. Princess found herself teaching, sharing knowledge she hadn't realized she had missed sharing. "In Afghanistan, we had a saying," she said as she repaired damaged tissue. "The surgery you're doing is always more important than the surgery you're not doing." "What does that mean?" "It means focus on the patient in front of you. Don't worry about the next case. Don't second-guess this the last one. Be completely present for this moment, this person, this chance to help." Philip nodded, absorbing not just the technique, but the philosophy behind it. "Is that how you dealt with losing patients?" "By focusing on the ones you could save." Princess's hands paused for a fraction of a second before resuming their work. "It's how I tried to deal with it. It didn't always work." By the time they finished their second surgery, the hospital's crisis had passed. The most critical patients were stable. The less severe cases were being treated in the emergency department, and the controlled chaos had returned to normal levels of medical urgency. Princess sat in the same surgeon's lounge where she had confronted her fears hours earlier. But now she felt different, exhausted but satisfied, scared but alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Philip joined her with 2 cups of coffee, settling into the chair across from her with the easy familiarity of surgical partners. "So," he said, "are you glad you stayed?" Princess took a sip of coffee and considered her answer. "I forgot how it felt to use my hands for what they were trained to do. And how does it feel like coming home to a place you're not sure you deserve to be?" Philip leaned forward in his chair. "Princess, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about being broken, about not trusting yourself with human lives. What about it? I watched you operate for 6 hours today. Your hands never shook. Your judgment was flawless. Your technique was better than most attending surgeons I've worked with. Whatever you thought you lost, you haven't lost it." Princess shook her head. Today was different. Crisis situations sometimes override normal responses. "That doesn't mean I'm ready to go back to regular practice. What would it take for you to be ready?" The question hung between them like a bridge Princess wasn't sure she was ready to cross. She had spent 6 years building walls around her capabilities, convincing herself that invisibility was safety, but today had cracked those walls, showing her glimpses of who she used to be. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe I'm afraid to find out." Philip set down his coffee cup and looked at her directly. "Princess, I have a confession to make. I've been watching you for months." "What do you mean?" "As a janitor, you were different from other cleaning staff. You moved around medical equipment like you understood it. You never flinched at traumatic cases. You seemed to anticipate what we needed before we asked for it. I started wondering who you were before you came here." Princess felt exposed, realizing her careful invisibility hadn't been as complete as she thought. "I never imagined you were a surgeon," Philip continued, "but I knew you were someone who understood medicine in a way that went beyond just cleaning up after it." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that your secret wasn't as well kept as you thought. And because I think part of you wanted to be discovered. The observation stung because it might have been true. Had she unconsciously been leaving clues? Had some part of her been hoping someone would see through her disguise?" "That's ridiculous," she said, but without conviction. "Is it? You could have worked at any hospital in the country. You chose Cleveland Clinic, one of the best trauma centers in Ohio. You could have worked day shift, but you chose nights when the most critical cases come in. You could have avoided the trauma bays entirely, but you always found reasons to be there during emergencies." Princess stared at him, uncomfortable with how accurately he had read her behavior. "Maybe," Philip said gently, "you weren't just hiding from medicine. Maybe you were staying close to it, waiting for the right moment to come back." Before Princess could respond, Trinity Roberts knocked on the lounge door and entered, carrying a manila folder and wearing an expression of professional determination. "Princess, we need to discuss your employment status." "Am I being fired?" "Quite the opposite," Trinity replied, opening her folder. "The hospital administration has been made aware of your background and your performance during today's emergency. Dr. Josiah Mullen, our chief of surgery, wants to meet with you." When now he's waiting in his office. Princess felt the walls closing in. Meeting with the chief of surgery meant official recognition, formal questions, and decisions that couldn't be undone. It meant the end of her invisible life and the beginning of something she wasn't sure she was ready for. "I'll come with you," Philip said. Standing up, "That's not necessary," Princess replied. "Yes, it is. You saved lives today. Mine included. I'm not letting you face this alone." As they walked toward Dr. Mullen's office, Princess realized that she was no longer walking alone through Cleveland Clinic's corridors. Philip was beside her, Trinity was advocating for her, and Bristol was supporting her return to surgery. For the first time in 6 years, Princess Goodman was no longer invisible. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. Dr. Josiah Mullen's office occupied the entire corner of Cleveland Clinic's administrative floor with windows overlooking the city and walls lined with medical degrees, awards, and photographs from a distinguished 30-year career. At 62, Josiah commanded respect through competence rather than intimidation, his silver hair and steady hands speaking to decades of surgical excellence. Princess sat across from his mahogany desk, still wearing surgical scrubs from a morning's emergency, feeling like a fraud in the presence of legitimate medical authority. Philip sat beside her, his presence both comforting and intimidating. Trinity Roberts stood near the window, her nursing supervisor credentials, giving her voice in personnel decisions. Major Princess Goodman. Josiah began reading from a thick military file spread across his desk. Johns Hopkins Medical School, magna cum laude. Surgical residency at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. 3 combat deployments to Afghanistan. Over 400 documented surgeries under combat conditions. Army Combination Medal for exceptional service under fire. He looked up from the file. This is quite impressive. It also raises some questions. Princess felt her throat tighten. I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me tell you what I already know. Josiah leaned back in his leather chair. 6 years ago, Major Princess Goodman requested indefinite leave from the Army Medical Corps. Official reason listed as personal hardship. Unofficial reports suggest combat-related trauma affecting job performance. That's correct, Princess said quietly. You moved to Cleveland and applied for a custodial position at this hospital under your legal name, but without disclosing your medical background. For 6 years, you've worked night shift maintenance while maintaining current medical licenses and board certifications. Josiah opened another folder. Last night, you performed emergency surgery on Tyler Jackson, saving his life. This morning, you assisted in multiple trauma surgeries during our Code Black emergency. Both Dr. Bristol Lynn and Dr. Philip Maddox have filed reports praising your surgical skill and clinical judgment. Philip leaned forward. Sir, Princess is one of the most skilled trauma surgeons I've ever worked with. I'm reading their reports. Dr. Maddox, what I need to understand is why someone with Major Goodman's qualifications spent 6 years mopping floors. Princess took a deep breath, knowing this moment would determine her future at Cleveland Clinic. Because I couldn't trust myself to practice medicine safely. Explain. After my 3rd deployment, I developed severe PTSD. Combat situations where I lost patience despite doing everything right began affecting my ability to operate. My hands would shake during procedures. I would freeze up at critical moments. I was becoming a danger to patients. Josiah nodded thoughtfully. And you felt the solution was to abandon medicine entirely. Not abandon it. Stay close to it while getting the help I needed. Princess looked directly at him. I tried traditional therapy, medications, everything the VA recommended. But I also needed to serve to be useful to be around medicine without the pressure of life and death decisions. So you became a janitor. I became invisible. I could observe, learn, stay connected to medicine while working on my own healing. I thought it would be temporary. 6 years doesn't sound temporary. Princess felt heat in her cheeks. I got comfortable with invisibility. It was safe. No one expected anything from me except clean floors and empty trash cans. No one could be hurt by my limitations. Josiah opened a 3rd folder, this one containing recent documents. Dr. Bristol Lynn has submitted a formal request for you to join our surgical staff as an attending physician specializing in trauma surgery. She believes your combat experience and surgical skills make you uniquely qualified for our emergency department. Princess felt the room spinning slightly. An attending position was everything she had walked away from 6 years ago. It was responsibility, authority, and the weight of human lives in her hands every single day. I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of responsibility, she said. Are you sure you're not ready, or are you sure you don't want to find out? Josiah asked. Philip spoke up. Sir, I watched Princess operate under extreme pressure twice now. She's not the same person who left medicine 6 years ago. She's better. How do you mean? She brings combat, experience to civilian trauma that most of us can't match. She sees patterns and makes decisions that save time when time is everything. But more than that, she's learned humility. She understands the weight of what we do in a way that only comes from losing patience despite your best efforts. Princess looked at Philip with surprise. She hadn't expected him to advocate so strongly for her. Josiah turned back to Princess. What do you think about Dr. Maddox's assessment? I think he's being generous because he feels guilty about questioning my motives yesterday. Are you always this hard on yourself? The question caught Princess off guard. She realized she had spent 6 years being her own harshest critic, never allowing herself credit for the healing she had accomplished or the service she had provided as a janitor. Probably, she admitted. Josiah stood up and walked his window, looking out at the city below. Princess, in 30 years of surgery, I've learned that the doctors who worry most about harming patients are usually the ones least likely to do so. The doctors who are certain they're always right are the ones who make deadly mistakes. He turned back to face her. Your combat experience is valuable. Your technical skills are exceptional. But what makes you truly qualified to work here is the fact that you understand the cost of failure. Princess felt tears threatening for the first time in years. What if I freeze up again? What if my hands shake during a critical procedure? Then you'll ask for help like any good surgeon would. Josiah returned to his desk. Princess, we don't need you to be perfect. We need you to be present. Trinity spoke for the first time since they had entered the office. Princess, you've been present for 6 years. You've been part of this hospital's mission, even when you thought you were just cleaning floors. Now, We're asking you to be present in a different way. Josiah opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. I'm offering you a position as attending trauma surgeon, night shift, starting immediately. Your salary will reflect your experience and qualifications. You'll work closely with Dr. Maddox and Dr. Lynn to develop our emergency trauma protocols. Princess stared at the envelope containing what felt like both salvation and damnation. I need to know about Tyler Jackson, she said suddenly. What about him? Is he going to recover fully? No complications, no permanent damage. According to his latest reports, complete recovery expected within 6 weeks. Princess nodded, feeling something settle in her chest and the patience from this morning's fire. All stable, all expected to recover fully. Philip leaned toward her. Princess, you save lives. That's not something you should question or minimize. Josiah cleared his throat. There's one condition to this offer. Princess looked up, waiting for the catch that would make the decision easier. You must agree to continue therapy with our staff psychologist who specializes in combat-related trauma. Not because we doubt your capability, but because we want to support your continued healing. The condition surprised her. She had expected restrictions on her practice or probationary status. Instead, they were offering help. Why? She asked. Because taking care of our doctors is how we take care of our patients, Trinity said simply. Princess looked around the room at these 3 people who were offering her everything she thought she had lost. A chance to practice medicine, colleagues who respected her abilities, support for her continued healing, recognition of her worth. But accepting meant giving up the invisible safety she had built over 6 years. It meant risking failure, judgment, and the possibility that her trauma would resurface under pressure. Can I have time to think about it? She asked. Of course, Josiah said, but don't take too long. We need good trauma surgeons, and you're the best one we've discovered, hiding in plain sight. As they left Josiah's office, Philip walked beside Princess to the hospital corridors that had been her domain for 6 years. But now they looked different. Instead of spaces to clean, they were spaces to heal. What are you thinking? Philip asked. I'm thinking that 6 hours ago I was invisible, and now people are asking me to save lives again. And how does that feel? Princess considered the question as they passed the trauma bay where Tyler Jackson had nearly died, where her invisible life had ended and something new had begun. Terrifying, she said. And right? Philip smiled. That sounds like the beginning of courage to me. Princess wasn't sure about courage, but as she looked at the hospital around her with new eyes, she realized that invisibility had been its own kind of prison. Maybe it was time to find out who she could become if she stopped hiding from who she used to be. The manila envelope in her hand felt heavy with possibility and responsibility. For the first time in 6 years, Princess Goodman was ready to find out if she could carry that weight. Princess stood in her small Cleveland apartment for the first time in 36 hours. The manila envelope from Dr. Mullen's office, sitting unopened on her kitchen table, like a loaded weapon. The contract inside could change everything, but she wasn't ready to read it yet. Instead, she stared out her window at the city lights, trying to reconcile the woman who had walked into Cleveland Clinic as a janitor with the surgeon everyone expected her to become. Her phone buzzed. A text from Philip. Tyler Jackson is awake and asking for you. Room 314 if you want to visit. Princess grabbed her jacket. She needed to see Tyler to confirm that her hands could still save lives, that the surgery hadn't been a fluke born from desperation. Cleveland Clinic's corridors felt different as she walked through them in civilian clothes. Nurses nodded respectfully instead of barely acknowledging her presence. Security guards who had seen her as invisible maintenance staff now looked at her with curiosity and recognition. The transformation was unsettling. Room 314 was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Tyler Jackson lay propped up in bed, his color good, his eyes alert. At 23, he looked even younger than she remembered from the trauma bay. Your princess, he said when she knocked on the doorframe. I am. How are you feeling? Like someone cut me open and put me back together, he said with a weak smile. But alive, which I'm told I have you to thank for. Princess moved closer to his bed, automatically checking his surgical site and noting the healthy color of his skin. How's your pain? Manageable. The nurses said you saved my life. That you're some kind of hero doctor who was working as a janitor. I'm not a hero, Princess said quickly. I just did what needed to be done. Tyler studied her face. Can I ask you something? Of course. When they were wheeling me to that scan machine, I thought I was going to die. I could feel myself getting weaker, like I was fading away. But when you stopped the elevator and looked at me, something changed. How did you know? The question hit Princess harder than she expected. She had spent 6 years avoiding moments like this, avoiding the gratitude and recognition that came with saving lives. I've seen that injury before, she said simply. In Afghanistan, word traveled fast in hospitals. Yes, Tyler was quiet for a moment processing this information. My older brother Jake served 2 tours in Iraq. He came back different, quieter. He won't talk about what happened over there. War changes people. But you came back and kept saving lives. Even as a janitor, Jake came back and couldn't hold a job for 6 months. What's the difference? Princess sat down in the visitor's chair. Tyler's question, forcing her to examine her own journey. I don't think there is a difference. We all come back broken in different ways. I just found a way to serve that felt safe for a while. And now I'm not sure what feels safe anymore. Tyler shifted in his bed to look at her more directly. Princess, can I tell you something? When I was lying on that construction site, pinned under that scaffolding, I wasn't thinking about being safe. I was thinking about all the things I never got to do, all the people I never told I loved them. His words carried the weight of someone who had faced mortality at 23. Being safe isn't the same as being alive, he continued. You saved my life, but maybe I can save yours, too. Stop hiding from who you're supposed to be. Before Princess could respond, there was a knock on the door. Philip entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing scrubs that suggested he had just finished surgery. I thought you might be here, he said, handing Princess a cup. Tyler, you look much better than the last time I saw you. Thanks to both of you, Tyler replied. Dr. Maddox, can I ask you something too? Sure. Are you 2 together? The question hung in the room like smoke. Princess felt heat rise in her cheeks, and Philip nearly choked on his coffee. We're colleagues, Philip said quickly. That's not what I asked, Tyler said with the directness of someone who had nearly died. I've been lying here thinking about life being short and people not saying what they mean. You 2 work together like you've been partners for years. You look at each other like there's something more than just work between you. Princess stood up abruptly. Tyler, you should rest. We should go. Princess, wait, Tyler said. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable, but I've been watching people visit me all day. Family, friends, co-workers, and I can tell when people care about each other. It's in the way they move around each other, the way they listen when the other person talks. Philip set down his coffee cup. Tyler, Princess and I have known each other for less than 48 hours. How long does it take to recognize something real? Tyler asked. Dr. Maddox, you didn't have to come check on me tonight. You didn't have to bring Princess coffee. You're here because she's here. Princess felt exposed, as if Tyler's near-death experience had given him the ability to see truths that others missed or ignored. And Princess, Tyler continued, you didn't have to visit me. You could have stayed home and pretended that surgery never happened. But you're here because you need to see that I'm okay, that your hands can still save lives, and maybe because you want to see Dr. Maddox again. The accuracy of his observations was startling and uncomfortable. Philip looked at Princess, his expression unreadable. Maybe we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. They found themselves in the hospital cafeteria, sitting at a corner table with untouched sandwiches between them. The late hour meant few staff members were around, giving them privacy to address Tyler's uncomfortable truths. He's observing for someone who just had major surgery, Philip said. Near-death experiences can clarify perspective, Princess replied. It's common for trauma patients to see relationships more clearly afterward. Is that your professional opinion? It's my experience from treating hundreds of trauma patients. Philip leaned back in his chair. So, what's your professional opinion about us? The question forced Princess to confront feelings she had been suppressing since their first surgery together. Working with Philip had felt natural, comfortable in a way that went beyond professional compatibility. There had been moments during their long hours in the OR when she had caught herself watching his hands, admiring his focus, feeling grateful for his presence. "I think Tyler sees something we've been avoiding discussing," she said carefully. "And what's that?" Princess met his eyes directly. "That we work well together. That there's mutual respect and trust building between us. That under different circumstances, we might explore what that could mean. What makes these circumstances different? I'm a mess, Philip. I've been hiding from my profession for 6 years. I have PTSD that could resurface at any time. I don't even know if I'm going to accept that job offer. How could I possibly consider a relationship?" Philip reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple but electric, sending warmth up her arm and into her chest. "Princess, do you know what I see when I look at you? A broken veteran trying to figure out how to function in civilian medicine. I see someone who sacrificed her own dreams to serve her country. Someone who came home wounded but found a way to keep serving others even in invisibility. Someone brave enough to step forward when lives were at stake despite being terrified." His thumb traced across her knuckles, and Princess realized she hadn't been touched with tenderness in years. "I see someone who teaches while she operates, who makes everyone around her better at their job. Someone who understands the weight of responsibility, but doesn't let it paralyze her when action is required. Philip, I'm not finished. I see someone who has spent 6 years being harder on herself than anyone else would ever be. Someone who deserves kindness, including from herself. Someone who doesn't realize that her struggles make her stronger, not weaker." Princess felt tears threatening for the second time in 2 days. "You barely know me. I know how you move around patients. I know how you think under pressure. I know you stayed invisible for 6 years rather than risk harming someone you were trying to help. I know you can perform flawless surgery and still question whether you're good enough." He squeezed her hand gently. "Princess, I've worked with dozens of surgeons. Most of them are technically competent, but emotionally disconnected. You operate with your heart as much as your hands. That's not weakness. That's what makes you extraordinary." Princess looked down at their joined hands, Philip's pale skin contrasting with her darker complexion, his steady surgeon's fingers intertwined with hers. "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. "I'm saying that Tyler is right. I didn't come to the hospital tonight just to check on a patient. I came hoping to find you there. I brought you coffee because I wanted an excuse to spend time with you. I've been thinking about you since we finished surgery yesterday morning." The confession hung between them, honest and vulnerable. "Philip, even if I wanted to explore this, and I'm not saying I do, the timing is terrible. I don't even know who I am right now. Maybe that's exactly the right time to let someone help you figure it out." Princess pulled her hand away, but gently. "What if I take that job and freeze up during surgery? What if my PTSD comes back and I become unreliable? What if I hurt someone? What if you don't? What if you become the surgeon you were always meant to be? What if helping others helps you heal? And what if we try this, whatever this is, and it doesn't work? We'd still have to work together." Philip smiled. "Princess, we performed life-saving surgery together twice. If we can handle that kind of pressure, I think we can handle a relationship." Princess looked around the quiet cafeteria, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. 2 days ago, she had been Invisible Princess, the janitor. Tonight, she was Dr. Princess Goodman, trauma surgeon, being asked to consider not just a job, but a relationship with a colleague she barely knew but somehow trusted completely. "I need time," she said finally. "How much time?" "I don't know. Time to read that contract. Time to figure out if I can really go back to practicing medicine. Time to understand what I want from life." Philip nodded. "I understand. But Princess, can I ask one favor?" "What?" "Don't disappear again. Whatever you decide about the job, about us, about anything, don't go back to being invisible. The world needs people like you. I need people like you." Princess looked at this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and still believed in her capability and worth. For the first time in 6 years, she felt something she had forgotten was possible. "Hope, I won't disappear," she said. "I promise." As they walked out of the hospital together, Princess realized that invisibility had been its own kind of death. Maybe it was time to find out what it felt like to be fully alive again. Princess arrived at Cleveland Clinic, carrying Dr. Mullen's signed contract in her purse and wearing the navy blue dress she had bought specifically for her first day as Dr. Princess Goodman, attending trauma surgeon. After a sleepless night of reading every clause, calling the VA therapist who had helped her years ago, and staring at herself in the mirror, she had decided to reclaim her life. The decision felt right until she walked to the hospital's main entrance and saw the cluster of news vans parked outside. Dr. Goodman, a reporter, thrust a microphone toward her face. Channel 8 News. Can you comment on the allegations that you've been practicing medicine without proper authorization? Princess froze. I'm sorry. What allegations? The medical board complaint filed by Dr. Shea, what's claiming you performed surgery while employed as custodial staff. Is it true you've been deceiving Cleveland Clinic about your qualifications? The world tilted sideways. Princess pushed past the reporter and hurried into the hospital, her heart pounding with familiar panic. In the lobby, she saw Trinity Roberts approaching with an expression of barely controlled anger. Princess, thank God you're here. We need to get you upstairs immediately. Trinity, what's happening? Who is Shea Watts? Dr. Shea Watts is a trauma surgeon who was passed over for the attending position Dr. Mullen offered you. Apparently, she's been investigating your background since yesterday and filed a formal complaint with the state medical board. They stepped into the elevator, and Princess felt the walls closing in. What kind of complaint? She's claiming you practice medicine illegally while employed as maintenance staff. She's saying the hospital covered up your unauthorized procedures and that patient safety was compromised. Princess's hands began to shake. The same trembling that had driven her away from medicine 6 years ago was returning at the worst possible moment. Trinity, I had Bristol Lynn supervising my procedures. My license was current. Everything I did was legal. I know that. Dr. Mullen knows that. But Shea has painted a picture of deception and cover-up that's got the media attention and medical board scrutiny. The elevator doors opened to reveal Philip waiting in the hallway, his face grim. Princess, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop this. You knew about it? Shea approached me yesterday asking questions about you. I thought she was just curious about the new attending hire. I had no idea she was building a case against you. Princess felt betrayal wash over her. What did you tell her? Nothing that should have mattered. That you had been working as custodial staff, that you performed emergency surgery, that you were qualified and skilled. Did you tell her about my PTSD? Philip's silence was answer enough. Philip, how could you? Princess's voice cracked. That was confidential. That was personal. She said she was concerned about patient safety. She made it sound like she was trying to protect people. I mentioned that you had dealt with combat trauma, but had worked through it. You had no right to discuss my medical history with anyone. Trinity stepped between them. We need to get upstairs. Dr. Mullen is meeting with the medical board investigators right now. But Princess was backing toward the elevator. The familiar symptoms of panic were building. Tightness in her chest, tunnel vision, the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out everything else. Princess, don't leave, Philip said desperately. We can fight this. Your credentials are solid. Your surgeries were successful. You saved lives. I can't do this. Princess's voice was barely a whisper. I can't be exposed like this. I can't have my trauma become public record. That's exactly what Shea is counting on. Trinity said firmly. She wants you to run. She wants you to disappear so she can claim the position. Princess looked at these two people who had supported her return to medicine and felt only betrayal and exposure. Philip had shared her private struggles with someone using them against her. Trinity was asking her to fight a battle she wasn't equipped for. I never should have tried to come back. Princess said I was safe as a janitor. I was helping people without hurting them. Princess, you're not hurting anyone. Philip said you're saving lives. Am I? Or am I a liability that the hospital is trying to cover up? The elevator arrived and Princess stepped inside. Philip moved to follow her, but she held up her hand. Don't. Please don't follow me. Where are you going? Home. Away from this. Away from all of it. Princess, if you leave now, Shay wins. The medical board will assume you're guilty of whatever she's claiming. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am guilty. Maybe I've been fooling myself that I could come back to medicine. The elevator doors began to close, but Philip caught them. Princess, look at me. You are the best trauma surgeon I've ever worked with. You saved Tyler Jackson's life. You saved multiple lives during a hotel fire emergency. You belong here. Do I? Or do I belong cleaning floors where no one expects anything from me except emptying trash cans? You belong wherever you choose to be, but don't choose to be invisible because someone else is threatened by your competence. Princess looked at Philip's earnest face and felt only exhaustion. 2 days ago, he had been a colleague she barely knew. Now he was asking her to trust him with her career and her heart, even after he had betrayed her confidence to someone using it against her. Philip, I appreciated everything you said last night about my worth and my capabilities, but you proved today that you don't really understand what it's like to be me. You don't understand what it costs to be vulnerable when people are looking for reasons to tear you down. I made a mistake. I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted, but that doesn't change anything about your qualifications or your value to this hospital. Princess shook her head. It changes everything about whether I can trust you. The words hit Philip like a physical blow. Princess saw the impact in his eyes and felt guilty despite her anger. Princess, please don't let Shay destroy what we built. We haven't built anything. Philip, we worked a few surgeries together and had one conversation. That's not enough foundation to weather this kind of storm. She released the elevator doors and let them close, leaving Philip and Trinity in the hallway. As the elevator descended, Princess pulled out her phone and called the number on the contract she had signed hours earlier with such hope. Dr. Mullen's office. This is Dr. Princess Goodman. I need to speak with Dr. Mullen immediately about withdrawing my acceptance of the attending position. Dr. Goodman. Dr. Mullen is in a meeting with medical board investigators. Can I take a message? Tell him I resign. Tell him I'm sorry for any trouble I've caused the hospital. Tell him Princess Goodman will not be joining the surgical staff. She hung up the phone and walked out of Cleveland Clinic for what she thought would be the last time. At home, Princess sat on her couch, still wearing the navy blue dress she had bought for her first day as a surgeon. The contract lay torn on her coffee table next to the local newspaper, which had already picked up the story. Hidden surgeon or hospital deception. Medical board investigates Cleveland Clinic. Her phone rang constantly. Philip's number appeared on the screen repeatedly, followed by Trinity's, then Bristol Lynn's, then numbers she didn't recognize that were probably reporters. She turned off the phone and sat in silence. By evening, the story had made the national news. Princess watched herself described as everything from a hero fighting against institutional racism to a dangerous fraud who had deceived patients and colleagues. The truth, as usual, was more complicated than either narrative. A knock at her door interrupted her spiral into despair. Through the peephole, she saw Philip standing in the hallway holding a folder and wearing an expression of determination. She almost didn't open the door. Princess, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. Against her better judgment, she opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want, Philip? I want to apologize. I want to explain. And I want to show you something that might change your mind about giving up. There's nothing that could change my mind. This is over. Philip held up the folder. Tyler Jackson's medical records and statements from every patient you've treated in the past 3 days. And a petition signed by 47 staff members asking the hospital to fight for you. It doesn't matter. My reputation is destroyed. My privacy is gone. I can't practice medicine under this kind of scrutiny. Princess, do you know what Shay Watts did when she heard you have been offered the attending position? I assume she filed her complaint. Before that, she went to Tyler Jackson and told him that his surgery might have been illegal. She told him that you might not have been qualified to operate on him. She tried to convince a recovering patient that his life had been put at risk. Princess felt a new wave of anger. What did Tyler say? He told her that he didn't care if you were a janitor, a doctor, or a plumber. He said you saved his life when no one else could, and he would trust you with his life again without hesitation. Philip opened the folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. He wrote this for the medical board investigation. Princess took the letter reluctantly and read Tyler's neat handwriting, "To whom it may concern. Dr. Princess Goodman saved my life. I don't care what title she held when she did it. I don't care what procedure she followed or didn't follow. I care that I'm alive to write this letter because she had the courage to step forward when I was dying. If Dr. Goodman is not allowed to practice medicine, then the medical system has lost someone special and patients like me will suffer for it." Princess folded the letter carefully, feeling tears she had been suppressing all day. "There are 6 more letters like that," Philip said softly, "from patients you've treated, from staff members who worked with you, from people who watched you save lives. It still doesn't change what you did. You violated my trust when I needed it most." Philip nodded. "You're right. I made a terrible mistake. I let someone manipulate me into sharing information I had no right to share. I can't undo that." He looked directly at her. "But Princess, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you not to let my mistake destroy your chance to be who you're meant to be. I was meant to be invisible. It was safer. You were meant to save lives. Everything else is just noise." Princess looked at this man who had seen her potential, betrayed her trust, and now stood on her doorstep, asking her to be braver than she felt capable of being. "Philip, even if I wanted to fight this, I don't know how. I don't know how to defend myself against public scrutiny and professional attacks. You don't have to do it alone." "Yes, I do. That's what being invisible taught me. When everything falls apart, you're always alone." Philip stepped back, accepting her decision. "Princess, I hope someday you'll understand that being alone isn't the same as being safe, and that being seen isn't the same as being vulnerable." After he left, Princess sat with Tyler's letter and realized that her decision to disappear again wasn't just about protecting herself. It was about punishing Philip for failing to protect her. And maybe she thought as she looked at her reflection in the dark window, that wasn't who she wanted to be either. Princess sat in her car outside Cleveland Clinic at dawn, watching the early shift nurses arrive for work. She had been parked there for 2 hours, unable to decide whether to drive away forever or walk through those doors one more time. Tyler's letter lay on her passenger seat beside a newspaper article titled, "Decorated Army Surgeon Fights Medical Board Investigation." The reporter had gotten most of the facts right. Princess Goodman, former Army major, 3 combat tours, hundreds of successful surgeries under fire. The article painted her as either a dedicated healer wrongfully persecuted or a dangerous fraud who had deceived everyone around her. Truth, as always, lived somewhere between the extremes. Princess looked at this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and still believed in her capability and worth. For the first time in 6 years, she felt something she had forgotten was possible. "Hope I won't disappear," she said. "I promise." As they walked out of the hospital together, Princess realized that invisibility had been its own kind of death. Maybe it was time to find out what it felt like to be fully alive again. Princess arrived at Cleveland Clinic, carrying Dr. Mullen's signed contract in her purse and wearing the navy blue dress she had bought specifically for her first day as Dr. Princess Goodman, attending trauma surgeon. After a sleepless night of reading every clause, calling the VA therapist who had helped her years ago, and staring at herself in the mirror, she had decided to reclaim her life. The decision felt right until she walked through the hospital's main entrance and saw the cluster of news vans parked outside. Dr. Goodman, a reporter, thrust a microphone toward her face. "Channel 8 News. Can you comment on the allegations that you've been practicing medicine without proper authorization?" Princess froze. "I'm sorry. What allegations?" "The medical board complaint filed by Dr. Shea Watts claiming you performed surgery while employed as custodial staff. Is it true you've been deceiving Cleveland Clinic about your qualifications?" The world tilted sideways. Princess pushed past the reporter and hurried into the hospital, her heart pounding with familiar panic. In the lobby, she saw Trinity Roberts approaching with an expression of barely controlled anger. "Princess, thank God you're here. We need to get you upstairs immediately." "Trinity, what's happening? Who is Shea Watts?" Dr. Shay Watts is a trauma surgeon who was passed over for the attending position Dr. Mullen offered you. Apparently, she's been investigating your background since yesterday and filed a formal complaint with the state medical board. They stepped into the elevator, and Princess felt the walls closing in. What kind of complaint? She's claiming you practice medicine illegally while employed as maintenance staff. She's saying the hospital covered up your unauthorized procedures and that patient safety was compromised. Princess's hands began to shake. The same trembling that had driven her away from medicine 6 years ago was returning at the worst possible moment. Trinity, I had Bristol Lynn supervise my procedures. My license was current. Everything I did was legal. I know that. Dr. Mullen knows that. But Shay has painted a picture of deception and cover-up that's got the media attention and medical board scrutiny. The elevator doors opened to reveal Philip waiting in the hallway, his face grim. Princess, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop this. You knew about it. She approached me yesterday asking questions about you. I thought she was just curious about the new attending hire. I had no idea she was building a case against you. Princess felt betrayal wash over her. What did you tell her? Nothing that should have mattered. That you had been working as custodial staff, that you performed emergency surgery, that you were qualified and skilled. Did you tell her about my PTSD? Philip's silence was answer enough. Philip, how could you? Princess's voice cracked. That was confidential. That was personal. She said she was concerned about patient safety. She made it sound like she was trying to protect people. I mentioned that you had dealt with combat trauma, but had worked through it. You had no right to discuss my medical history with anyone. Trinity stepped between them. We need to get upstairs. Dr. Mullen is meeting with the medical board investigators right now. But Princess was backing toward the elevator. The familiar symptoms of panic were building. Tightness in her chest, tunnel vision, the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out everything else. Princess, don't leave, Philip said desperately. We can fight this. Your credentials are solid. Your surgeries were successful. You saved lives. I can't do this. Princess's voice was barely a whisper. I can't be exposed like this. I can't have my trauma become public record. That's exactly what Shay is counting on, Trinity said firmly. She wants you to run. She wants you to disappear so she can claim the position. Princess looked at these two people who had supported her return to medicine and felt only betrayal and exposure. Philip had shared her private struggles with someone using them against her. Trinity was asking her to fight a battle she was equipped for. I never should have tried to come back, Princess said. I was safe as a janitor. I was helping people without hurting them. Princess, you're not hurting anyone. Philip said, you're saving lives. Am I? Or am I a liability that the hospital is trying to cover up? The elevator arrived and Princess stepped inside. Philip moved to follow her, but she held up her hand. Don't. Please don't follow me. Where are you going? Home. Away from this. Away from all of it. Princess, if you leave now, Shay wins. The medical board will assume you're guilty of whatever she's claiming. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am guilty. Maybe I've been fooling myself that I could come back to medicine. The elevator doors began to close, but Philip caught them. Princess, look at me. You are the best trauma surgeon I've ever worked with. You saved Tyler Jackson's life. You saved multiple lives during the hotel fire emergency. You belong here. Do I? Or do I belong? Cleaning floors where no one expects anything from me except emptying trash cans. You belong wherever you choose to be. But don't choose to be invisible because someone else is threatened by your competence. Princess looked at Philip's earnest face and felt only exhaustion. 2 days ago, he had been a colleague she barely knew. Now he was asking her to trust him with her career and her heart, even after he had betrayed her confidence to someone using it against her. Philip, I appreciated everything you said last night about my worth and my capabilities. But you proved today that you don't really understand what it's like to be me. You don't understand what it costs to be vulnerable when people are looking for reasons to tear you down. I made a mistake. I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted, but that doesn't change anything about your qualifications or your value to this hospital. Princess shook her head. It changes everything about whether I can trust you. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bristol. Medical board hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. today. They want to interview you. Princess, please don't let them win by default. Another text, this one from Trinity. 43 staff members have submitted statements supporting you. We're not giving up even if you want to. Princess closed her eyes and tried to imagine what her life would look like if she drove away. She could move to another city, find another hospital that needed custodial staff, return to the invisible safety she had known for 6 years. No one would expect anything from her except clean floors and empty waste baskets. But Tyler Jackson's words echoed in her mind. Being safe isn't the same as being alive. A tap on her car window startled her from her thoughts. Zechariah Richards stood beside her car, wearing his security uniform and holding 2 cups of coffee. Princess rolled down her window. "Thought you might need this?" he said, handing her a cup. "Mind if I sit with you for a minute?" Princess nodded toward the passenger seat. Zechariah settled his large frame into her small car, bringing with him the calm presence that had made him a natural peacekeeper in the hospital's controlled chaos. "You know," he said after a moment of comfortable silence, "I've been working security here for 8 years. I've seen a lot of doctors come and go. Most of them see me about as clearly as they saw you when you were mopping floors. And in 8 years, I've never seen a doctor fight as hard to save a life as you did with that construction worker. I've never seen someone teach while they operate, making everyone around them better at their job." Princess sipped her coffee and watched a group of residents hurry through the parking lot, their white coats flapping like wings in the cold morning air. "Zechariah, what if they're right? What if I was deceiving people by not telling them about my background? Were you deceiving Tyler Jackson when you saved his life? That's different." "How?" Princess struggled to articulate the difference. "I was just doing what needed to be done." "Exactly. You were being exactly who you are, regardless of what uniform you were wearing or what title people gave you." Zachariah turned in his seat to look at her directly. "Princess, I'm a Marine. I understand what it's like to come home from war, feeling like you don't fit anywhere. Do you? I spent my first year back working construction. Try to use my hands instead of my head, trying not to think about the things I'd seen. But running from who you are doesn't make you safer. It just makes you smaller." Princess felt the weight of his words. "What made you stop running?" "A moment just like this one. A choice between staying small and safe or risking everything to become who I was meant to be. And if I choose wrong, if I fight this and lose everything anyway." Zachariah smiled. "Princess, you already lost everything yesterday when you walked away from that job. The question is whether you're going to let someone else decide your future or whether you're going to fight for yourself." Before Princess could respond, another car pulled into the parking space beside them. Philip stepped out looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his confident demeanor replaced with exhaustion and determination. He knocked on Princess's window. She hesitated, then rolled it down. "Princess, I've been looking for you everywhere. I'm right here. Are you? Or are you getting ready to disappear again?" The accuracy of his observation stung. "What do you want, Philip?" "I want to tell you what I've been doing for the past 18 hours, instead of sleeping." Princess waited, not making it easy for him. "I've been calling every combat medic I could find who served with you in Afghanistan. I've been reading your published research papers from your residency at Walter Reed. I've been interviewing patients you saved during your 6 years of supposedly hiding." "What patients?" Philip pulled out a tablet and showed her a video. "Mrs. Dakota McCoo, room 507. 2 years ago, heart attack during visiting hours. You performed CPR for 8 minutes until the code team arrived. You never identified yourself as anything other than cleaning staff, but you saved her life." He scrolled to another video. "Mr. Ray Waters' son, choking incident in the cafeteria 3 years ago. You performed the Heimlich maneuver perfectly, cleared his airway, stayed with him until paramedics arrived again. You never claimed medical training." Princess stared at the tablet, seeing faces she remembered, but incidents she had tried to forget. There are 12 more stories like this. "Princess, 12 times in 6 years when you stepped forward as just a janitor and saved someone's life using medical knowledge and training. Those were emergencies. Anyone would have helped. Not anyone could have helped the way you did. And not anyone would have disappeared back into invisibility afterward without taking credit. Philip knelt beside her car window, his voice intense with conviction. Princess, you've been practicing medicine for 6 years. You've been saving lives for 6 years. The only difference is that you've been doing it without recognition, without compensation, and without the support you deserved. What's your point? My point is that Shea Watts is wrong. You weren't deceiving anyone. You were serving everyone. The question isn't whether you're qualified to be a doctor. The question is whether the medical community deserves to have you. Princess felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, but opening like ice beginning to thaw after a long winter. Philip, even if that's true, you still betrayed my trust. You still share my private information with someone who used it against me. You're right. I did. And I regret that mistake for the rest of my life. He looked directly into her eyes. But, Princess, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to forgive yourself. What do you mean? I mean, you spent 6 years punishing yourself for not saving every soldier who came through your field hospital. You spent 6 years believing that your trauma makes you weak instead of understanding that it makes you human. Philip stood up, his hand resting on her car window. The medical board hearing is in 8 hours. You can choose not to show up, and they'll make their decision without hearing your side. Dr. Watts, Princess said, her voice gaining strength, what would you have done if you had been cleaning floors when Tyler Jackson was brought in with a ruptured spleen? I would have followed proper protocols. Which protocols? The ones that would have sent him for a CT scan that would have taken 30 minutes while he bled to death, or the protocols that recognize a doctor's obligation to preserve life regardless of their current job title. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the ventilation system. Princess realized she was no longer defending herself. She was advocating for a principle larger than her own career. Dr. Clean, she continued, I came home from Afghanistan with severe PTSD that made me unable to practice medicine safely in traditional settings. Instead of abandoning medicine entirely, I found a way to stay close to healing while working on my own recovery. I served quietly, humbly, and effectively. She pulled out Tyler Jackson's letter and read it aloud. Dr. Princess Goodman saved my life. I don't care what title she held when she did it. If Dr. Goodman is not allowed to practice medicine, then the medical system has lost someone special and patients like me will suffer for it. Dr. Clean looked at his fellow board members, then back at Princess. Dr. Goodman, your military record shows exceptional service and surgical skill. Your current medical licenses are valid. The surgeries you performed were successful and properly supervised. Yes, sir. However, the question remains whether practicing medicine while employed in a non-medical capacity violates professional standards. Before Princess could respond, the hearing room door opened and Tyler Jackson entered, moving slowly but steadily. He wore a crisp white shirt and carried himself with the dignity of someone who had faced mortality and emerged grateful. I'm sorry to interrupt, Tyler said, but I believe I have something relevant to say. Dr. Clean looked surprised but nodded. Please proceed, Mr. Jackson. Tyler walked to the front of the room and stood beside Princess. My name is Tyler Jackson. 3 days ago, Dr. Princess Goodman saved my life. I've been following this hearing because Dr. Watts visited me in the hospital and suggested that my surgery might have been illegal or dangerous. He turned to look directly at Dr. Watts. Ma'am, with all due respect, you weren't there. You didn't see me dying while protocols and procedures were followed. You didn't see Dr. Goodman step forward when no one else could help me. Tyler faced the board. I don't understand medical politics or institutional procedures, but I understand that good people sometimes have to choose between following rules and saving lives. Dr. Goodman chose to save my life, and I'm grateful she was brave enough to do what was necessary. He pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. This is a petition signed by 127 people, patients Dr. Goodman has helped, their families, and hospital staff who worked with her. We're asking you not to punish someone for having the courage to help when help was needed. Tyler handed the petition to Dr. Clean, then looked at Princess. Dr. Goodman, thank you for seeing me as a person worth saving, regardless of what uniform you were wearing. As Tyler took a seat, Princess felt something shift in the room's atmosphere. The board members were no longer looking at her as a potential violator of medical ethics, but as someone who embodied the best qualities of the healing profession. Dr. Clean conferred quietly with his colleagues for several minutes before addressing the room. Dr. Goodman, this board's responsibility is to ensure patient safety and maintain professional standards. Based on the evidence presented, we find no indication that your actions endangered patients or violated medical ethics. Princess felt her knees weaken with relief. Furthermore, Dr. Klein continued, we find that your actions demonstrate exceptional medical judgment and personal courage. While we cannot officially encourage medical practice outside institutional frameworks, we recognize that emergency situations sometimes require immediate action from qualified individuals. He looked directly at Princess. Dr. Goodman, your medical licenses remain valid, and you are clear to practice medicine without restriction. Dr. Shea Watts stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She deceived everyone about her qualifications. Dr. Watts, Dr. Klein's voice carried warning. Dr. Goodman never claimed qualifications she didn't possess. She simply didn't advertise qualifications she did possess while working in a service capacity. Princess felt tears of relief and vindication rolling down her cheeks. Philip stood beside her, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. Thank you, Princess said to the board. Thank you for understanding that healing comes in many forms. As they left the hearing room, Princess was surrounded by the people who believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. Bristol Lynn hugged her tightly. Trinity beamed with pride, and Zechariah nodded with the satisfaction of someone who had watched courage triumph over fear. Philip walked beside her toward the parking garage, both of them quiet as they processed what had just happened. So, he said finally, Dr. Princess Goodman, attending trauma surgeon. How does that sound? Terrifying and perfect, Princess replied. And us? How does that sound? Princess stopped walking and turned to face him. Philip, I need you to understand something about loving someone with PTSD. Tell me, there will be bad days. Days when I remember too much and trust too little. Days when I question everything, including whether I deserve happiness. Philip nodded. I understand. Do you? Do you understand that loving me means accepting that healing isn't linear? That progress isn't always visible. Philip took her hands in his Princess. I understand that loving anyone means accepting their whole story, not just the parts that are easy or comfortable. I understand that your struggles don't make you broken. They make you human. He pulled her closer. And I understand that the woman who spent 6 years serving others invisibly, who stepped forward to save Tyler Jackson despite her fears, who faced down a medical board to defend her right to heal people, is exactly the woman I want to build a life with. Princess felt the last of her walls crumbling, not from force, but from the gentle persistence of someone who saw her completely and loved her anyway. Philip, I love you, too, not despite my brokenness, but including it, all of it. They kissed in the parking garage of Cleveland Clinic, surrounded by the sounds of a hospital that never slept, where healing happened in operating rooms and janitors' closets, and anywhere people chose courage over comfort. 6 months later, Dr. Princess Goodman stood in Trauma Bay 3, teaching a group of residents how to handle multiple casualties. Her quiet authority had transformed the night shift into Cleveland Clinic's most efficient trauma unit, and her combination of combat experience and civilian expertise made her one of the most respected surgeons on staff. Remember, she told the young doctors, in trauma surgery, your first impression is usually correct. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and move quickly. Philip approached, now serving as co-director of emergency medicine alongside her. Their partnership had transformed not just their department, but their entire approach to medicine, combining technical excellence with compassionate care. Dr. Goodman, he said with mock formality, your husband is here to walk you home. Princess smiled at the word husband, still new enough to bring warmth to her chest. They had married quietly 3 months earlier, with Tyler Jackson serving as one of their witnesses and Zechariah Richards walking her down the aisle. As they left the hospital together, Princess reflected on the journey from invisible janitor to celebrated surgeon, from broken veteran to healed healer, from isolated individual to beloved partner. "Philip," she said as they walked to the parking lot where she had once sat in her car, afraid to choose courage over safety. "Yes. Thank you for seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. Thank you for letting me love you when you thought you were unlovable." Princess looked back at Cleveland Clinic, where she had spent 6 years hiding and 2 years healing, where she had learned that service came in many forms, and that love could triumph over even the deepest wounds. She was no longer invisible. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Sometimes our greatest struggles prepare us for our greatest triumphs. 2 years later, Dr. Princess Goodman Maddox stood before a packed auditorium at the American College of Surgeons annual conference, delivering her keynote address on combat medicine in civilian trauma, lessons from the hidden years. The audience of 800 surgeons listened intently as she described her journey from invisible janitor to leading trauma surgeon, but more importantly, how her years of service in both roles had shaped her approach to healing. "The question I'm asked most frequently," Princess said, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone, "is whether I regret the 6 years I spent as custodial staff instead of practicing surgery. My answer is always the same. Those 6 years weren't lost time. They were essential preparation." She clicked to her next slide, showing statistics from Cleveland Clinic's trauma unit. "Our department now has the lowest mortality rate for emergency trauma cases in Ohio, and we've developed protocols that are being adopted by hospitals nationwide. This success didn't happen despite my years as a janitor. It happened because of them." In the audience, Philip watched his wife with pride that had only deepened over their 2 years of marriage. As co-directors of emergency medicine, they had transformed not just their department, but the entire hospital's approach to trauma care. Their success had attracted national attention and led to consulting opportunities across the country. After the presentation, Princess was surrounded by colleagues asking questions about her methodology, her training programs, and her unique perspective on patient care. Among them was Dr. Bristol Lynn, now Cleveland Clinic's chief of surgery, who had flown in specifically to support Princess's presentation. "The medical journals are calling you the most innovative trauma surgeon of your generation," Bristol said as they walked to the reception. "How does that feel?" "Surreal," Princess admitted. 2 years ago, I was afraid to pick up a scalpel. Now I'm teaching other surgeons how to think differently about trauma care. And personally, how are things with the PTSD? The adjustment to being visible again?" Princess smiled, her hand unconsciously moving to the small scar on her wedding finger, where her ring had caught during particularly intense surgery 6 months earlier. "Some days are harder than others. But I have Philip. I have my therapist, Dr. Patterson, and I have work that feels meaningful. The nightmares still come sometimes, but they don't control my life anymore." They were interrupted by Tyler Jackson, now 25 and working as a paramedic with Cleveland EMS. He had changed career paths after his accident, inspired by the medical professionals who had saved his life. "Dr. Princess," Tyler said, using the informal title that had stuck among the hospital staff, "I just wanted to thank you again and to tell you something." "What's that?" "I've been on 347 calls since I became a paramedic. Every time I see someone who's scared, who thinks they might die, I tell them about you, about how someone saved my life by choosing courage over safety. You've given me something to pass along to other people when they need hope." Princess felt a familiar tightness in her throat that came with moments like this. "Tyler, you've saved more lives than you know just by being willing to serve others. I learned that from watching you." As Tyler moved away, Princess saw another familiar face approaching. Dr. Shea Watts walked toward her hesitantly, wearing an expression that mixed professional respect with personal discomfort. "Dr. Goodman," Shea said formally, "congratulations on your keynote. It was enlightening." "Thank you, Dr. Watts. I wanted to apologize publicly, if you prefer. What I did 2 years ago was unprofessional and motivated by jealousy rather than legitimate medical concerns." Princess studied the woman who had nearly destroyed her career. Shea looked different now, humbled in a way that spoke of difficult lessons learned. Apology accepted, Princess said simply, "We've all made mistakes. I've been following your work, the protocols you've developed, the training programs. You were right about trauma needing a different approach. There's room for everyone to contribute. Shea medicine is better when we learn from each other instead of competing with each other. Shea nodded, looking relieved. I requested a transfer to rural medicine. I think I need to remember why I became a doctor in the first place. After Shea left, Philip appeared at Princess's side with 2 glasses of wine and the easy comfort of a partner who knew when she needed quiet support. Heavy conversation, he asked. Healing conversation, Princess replied. How did things go with the hospital board meeting? Philip's face lit up with excitement. They approved our proposal. Full funding for the Princess Goodman Center for combat veteran medical training. We'll be able to train civilian doctors in battlefield techniques and help veteran medical personnel transition back to civilian practice. Princess felt tears gathering in her eyes. The center had been their shared vision for over a year, a way to ensure that other veterans wouldn't have to choose between hiding their skills and risking their mental health. And there's more good news, Philip continued. The VA has agreed to partner with us. They're going to refer veterans struggling with medical PTSD to our program. Philip, that's incredible. It gets better. Trinity is going to head the nursing education component. Bristol is consulting on surgical training. And Zechariah has agreed to run the peer support program. Princess looked around the reception, seeing colleagues, friends, and the man she loved, all committed to advancing the kind of medicine she had stumbled toward in her darkest moments. There's something I need to tell you, she said, taking his hand. What? I'm pregnant. Philip's wine glass nearly slipped from his hand. Are you sure? 3 tests this morning. Dr. Patterson says there's no medical reason why the pregnancy would be affected by my PTSD, and my stress levels are the lowest they've been since Afghanistan. Philip sat down both their wine glasses and pulled her into his arms right there in the middle of the reception. Princess, this is the best news I've ever received. Are you ready to be a father? Are you ready to be a mother while running a trauma unit and starting a training center? Princess laughed, feeling joy bubble up from somewhere deep inside her chest. We'll figure it out. We're good at adapting to unexpected situations. The best. As they held each other, Princess caught sight of her reflection in the reception hall's mirrors. She saw a woman in a royal blue dress, confident and radiant, surrounded by people who valued her contributions and loved her unconditionally. The contrast with the invisible janitor who had hidden in plain sight for 6 years was stark. But both women were her. Both had served others in the ways they were capable of at the time. Both had been necessary parts of her journey to this moment. 6 months later, Princess stood in the newly opened Princess Goodman Center for Combat Veteran Medical Training, holding her 3-month-old daughter, Hope Goodman Maddox, while addressing the first cohort of veteran medical personnel entering the transition program. You are not broken, she told a group of doctors, nurses, and medics who had served in combat zones around the world. You are not damaged goods. You are highly trained medical professionals whose skills and experience are desperately needed in civilian health care. She looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms, representing the future they were all working toward. Some of you may need time to heal before you're ready for high-pressure medical environments. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Some of you may choose different paths than the ones you had before deployment. That's not failure. That's growth. Princess looked around the room at faces that reflected her own journey back to wholeness. What matters is that you don't disappear. What matters is that you find ways to serve that honor both who you were and who you're becoming. What matters is that you remember that healing comes in many forms and all of them have value. After the session, Princess walked through Cleveland Clinic's corridors with Hope in her arms, visiting the trauma unit where she still spent 3 days a week practicing medicine and 2 days a week training the next generation of combat experienced healthcare providers. She stopped at Trauma Bay 3 where a young resident was suturing a construction worker's laceration. The resident's hands were steady, his technique flawless, his bedside manner kind and professional. Dr. Reynolds, Princess said to the resident, "Beautiful work. How's your patient feeling?" "Much better. Thanks to Dr. Reynolds," the construction worker said. "He's got healing hands." Princess smiled, remembering when healing hands had been hidden behind cleaning supplies and invisible service. Now those same principles of quiet competence and compassionate care were being taught to new generations of doctors who understood that medicine was about more than technical skill. As she walked home with hope, Princess reflected on the phone call she had received that morning from the Army Medical Corps. They had offered her a position as Director of Combat Medical Training, overseeing the transition of military medical personnel to civilian practice on a national scale. She had asked for time to consider the offer, knowing that whatever she decided, she would never again choose invisibility over service, fear over courage, or isolation over love. Princess Goodman Maddox, former major, former invisible janitor, current trauma surgeon, future mother, and leader, had finally learned the most important lesson of all. She was exactly who she was meant to be in whatever capacity she chose to serve. The story that had begun with a hidden surgeon mopping floors in Trauma Bay 3 had become a legacy of healing that would touch countless lives for generations to come. And that legacy would continue carried forward by Hope and all the other children who would grow up knowing that service comes in many forms, that healing happens in many ways, and that love truly can conquer any obstacle when courage meets compassion. Princess's journey reminds us that our struggles don't disqualify us from greatness. They prepare us for it. Sometimes the most profound healing happens when we stop hiding our gifts and start sharing them with the world. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to remember their own worth, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the hidden heroes walking among us every day. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.